I was pinning my sister's veil when her future mother-in-law seized my wrist, her whispered words slicing through my world like a cold wind. "We finally found you. You're our stolen daughter." I'm Harper Morrison, or so I thought. 28, event coordinator, fiercely protective sister, daughter of Frank and Diane. Until that moment at Willow's wedding, my life felt solid, predictable. But truth has a way of waiting, lurking in the shadows of joy, ready to unravel everything when you're most vulnerable. That June morning broke with flawless weather, sunlight spilling over Rosewood Manor like a promise of fairy tale endings. Willow glowed in her ivory gown, Mason's eyes glistened at the altar, and our parents radiated pride from the front row. My job as maid of honor was to keep it all perfect, but Victoria Caldwell's gaze, sharp, unyielding, pricked my skin like a needle. Her nails bit into my arm just before the ceremony, her voice trembling with those 8 impossible words. The string quartet hummed, guests settled into their seats, and I stood frozen, clutching Willow's bouquet, a stranger claiming I was hers. The day began at 7 a.m., my car stuffed with supplies that could fend off any wedding disaster. Safety pins, stain remover, extra pantyhose, granola bars, a sewing kit that had saved countless hems. As an event coordinator, I knew chaos hid in every detail. As Willow's sister, I planned for catastrophes only my anxious mind could conjure. The manor smelled of fresh coffee and peonies, the air buzzing with anticipation. "Harper, thank God," Willow said, flinging open the bridal suite door, her hair in rollers, her silk robe flashing bride in gold. "Mom's already crying, the makeup artist is late, and I'm about to lose it." "Breathe," I said, setting my bags on the velvet settee, its fabric cool under my hands. "Remember the talent show? You thought you'd puke, but you sang like a star." "That wasn't vowing eternal love to 200 people," she shot back, but her shoulders eased as I squeezed her hands. This was us. Willow, the dreamer painting life in watercolors. Me, the planner keeping her tethered. Our parents called us 2 halves of one whole. Mom burst in, her lavender dress catching the light, a velvet jewelry box in her trembling hands. "My beautiful girls," she said, her voice catching oddly. "Willow, these are Grandma Eleanor's pearls, worn at her wedding in '52 and mine." Her hands shook as she fastened them around Willow's neck, her smile too bright, her eyes darting. "You okay, Mom?" I asked, catching a flicker of something. "Fear? Guilt?" "Just emotional," she said quickly. "My baby's getting married. Time slips away, doesn't it?" "You two, always together," Harper shielding Willow from playground bullies. I didn't shield, I corrected, grinning. "I punched Timothy Crawford for mocking your butterfly sneakers." "He deserved it," Willow laughed, and for a moment, Mom's tension melted. We were the Morrison girls, a fortress against the world. Dad always said he was outnumbered but never outmatched. The makeup artist arrived, flustered, brushes clattering as she set up. I sorted bridesmaids' bouquets, watching Mom check her phone, her frown deepening. "Dad here yet?" I asked. "With the photographer, planning family shots," she said, then added softly, "Harper, we love you both more than anything. You know that?" "Before noon?" I teased. "You dying or something?" She hugged me fiercely, her perfume sharp with lilac. "Can't a mom say she loves her girls?" "Sure, but you're holding me like I'm vanishing," I said, pulling back. She laughed, but it wobbled, unsteady. Willow caught my eye in the mirror as I zipped her dress. "Are Mom and Dad acting weird, or is it just me? They've been off all week." "Just emotional," I said, but I'd noticed too. Their hushed talks, Dad's lingering looks at the rehearsal dinner, like he was memorizing me. "We'll always be their babies," Willow said, her smile soft. "Even when we're old, building blanket forts." I smoothed her lace, the fabric cool and delicate. "Some things never change," I said, unaware that everything already had. The hum of pre-wedding chaos filled Rosewood Manor as I darted between tasks, but Victoria Caldwell's unsettling presence was a shadow I couldn't shake. Her eyes followed me like a hawk's, sharp and unblinking, as if she were trying to unravel me piece by piece. The morning had been a whirlwind of floral arrangements and last-minute checks, but her intensity was a splinter under my skin, impossible to ignore. The air in the reception hall carried the faint sweetness of lilies, undercut by the metallic tang of my own rising unease. I was arranging place cards, aligning each name with precision, when Victoria appeared at my elbow, her perfume a cloying wave of jasmine. "I'm sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all, her voice low and probing. "You just look incredibly familiar. Have we met before? I forced a smile, my fingers pausing on a card labeled Cousin Brady. I don't think so, Mrs. Caldwell. I'm Harper, Willow's sister. We met briefly at the engagement party. No, before that, she murmured, tilting her head, her gaze raking over my face like I was a puzzle she'd lost the pieces to. Something about your features. Your eyes, especially, such an unusual shade of green. I shifted uncomfortably, the cardstock crinkling under my grip. I should check on the caterers, I said, stepping back, but her stare lingered as I retreated. The hall buzzed with guests arriving, their laughter clashing with the knot tightening in my chest. 20 minutes later, I was adjusting the altar flowers, white roses woven with eucalyptus, when she found me again. The petals felt cool against my fingertips, but her voice cut through the calm. Harper, she said, drawing out my name like she was tasting it. Is that a family name? Actually, my mom just liked how it sounded, I replied, keeping my tone light despite the prickle of irritation. Her gray eyes bored into mine, and I noticed her hands twisting the strap of her designer clutch. You have such a distinctive look, she pressed. Where did you grow up? Chicago, born and raised. I turned back to the flowers, hoping she'd take the hint, but she stepped closer. What hospital? The question was so abrupt, so oddly specific, that I laughed, though it came out strained. I have no idea. Why? I glanced at her, expecting an explanation, but her face paled, her gaze dropping to my collarbone where my dress had slipped slightly, revealing the crescent-shaped birthmark I'd had since forever. She stumbled back, knocking into a chair, her breath hitching. Mrs. Caldwell, are you feeling all right? Should I get Mason? I reached out, but she waved me off, her voice sharp. No, don't tell Mason anything, not yet. She hurried away, her heels clicking on the marble floor, leaving me frozen, a rose stem pricking my palm. I tried to shake it off, focusing on the next task, checking the sound system for the ceremony, but her questions echoed in my mind. What hospital? Why did it matter? I found our cousin Brady, an usher with a knack for reading people, near the bar. Keep an eye on the groom's mother, I whispered, glancing over my shoulder. I think she might be drunk or having some kind of breakdown. She seemed sober to me, Brady said, frowning. Just asked me a bunch of weird questions about your family, wanted to know how long I'd known you, if I remembered when you were born. A chill ran down my spine, cold as the ice in the champagne buckets nearby. What did you tell her? The truth. That we didn't meet until you guys moved from Milwaukee when you were 2. Why? What's going on? Milwaukee. The word hit like a stone sinking in water. I'd heard the story 100 times. Dad got a better job in Chicago, so the Morrisons packed up and left. Nothing suspicious. Families moved all the time. But Victoria's fixation, her pale face at the sight of my birthmark, planted a seed of doubt I couldn't uproot. Harper? Brady's voice pulled me back. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just keep an eye on her, I managed, my throat tight. I turned away, the scent of eucalyptus clinging to my hands, and headed toward the bridal suite to check on Willow. But as I walked, the manor's polished floors seemed to tilt beneath me, the walls whispering questions I wasn't ready to answer. The third encounter came just before the ceremony, as I was pinning a boutonniere on one of the groomsmen. Victoria materialized again, her makeup flawless but her eyes red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. Harper, can we talk? She asked, her voice low but urgent. I'm kind of busy, I said, forcing a smile as I adjusted the pin. Maybe after the ceremony? It's important, she insisted, her hand brushing my arm, her touch cold despite the warm June air. It's about your family. Something in her tone made my stomach lurch, like stepping off a curb you didn't see. Okay, but make it quick, I said, leading her to a quiet corner near the manor's library. The shelves loomed with old books, their leather bindings giving off a musty scent that mingled with her jasmine perfume. She hesitated, her fingers trembling as she opened her clutch. I don't mean to upset you, she began, but her eyes said otherwise. It's just, you remind me of someone I lost. Someone very dear. I swallowed hard, her words pressing against the fragile wall I'd built around my unease. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Caldwell, but I really need to get back to Willow. She nodded, but her gaze lingered on my collarbone again, as if the birthmark held answers I didn't understand. As I walked away, the weight of her stare followed me, heavy as the clouds gathering on the horizon. The fourth encounter happened minutes before the ceremony, shattering the fragile composure I'd pieced together amid Victoria's odd probing. I was doing a final check on Willow, making sure her veil was secure, the delicate tulle falling just right against her shoulders, when Victoria appeared in the doorway of the bridal suite. Her face was blotchy, her expensive makeup ruined by tears that had streaked her cheeks like cracked porcelain. The room smelled of hairspray and fresh lilies from Willow's bouquet, but the air thickened with tension as she stepped inside, her heels sinking into the plush carpet. "I need to speak with Harper alone," she said, her voice cracking like dry leaves underfoot. Willow frowned, her reflection in the mirror showing confusion mixed with bridal nerves. "Mrs. Caldwell, we're about to walk down the aisle. Please, it's urgent." Victoria's eyes locked on mine, pleading in a way that sent a shiver through me, cold as the champagne chilling nearby. Something in her desperation made me nod. "Give us 2 minutes," I told Willow. "I'll be right back." Victoria pulled me into an empty room down the hall, the door clicking shut behind us with a finality that echoed in my chest. The space was dim, lit only by sunlight filtering through heavy drapes, casting long shadows across antique furniture. She fumbled with her purse, her hands shaking as she extracted a worn photograph, the edges soft from years of handling, like a talisman rubbed smooth by worry. "This is my daughter, Emma," she whispered, pressing the photo into my hands. She was 14 months old when someone took her from my shopping cart at a grocery store in Milwaukee, 28 years ago. I stared at the baby in the picture, chubby cheeks, wispy brown hair, bright green eyes, and there, on her tiny collarbone, a crescent-shaped birthmark identical to mine. The room spun slightly, the scent of old wood from the nearby bookshelf grounding me as I fought for words. "This is impossible," I said, but my voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I'm Harper Morrison. I've always been Harper Morrison." "Your blood type," Victoria said urgently, leaning forward, her breath warm on my face. "Do you know it?" "O negative. I donate blood regularly." Her legs gave out, and she sank onto a chair, the fabric creaking under her weight. "My husband and I are both AB positive. It's genetically impossible for us to have an O negative child, but Emma was O negative. The birthmark, the blood type, your age, those green eyes that skip a generation in my family. You're wrong." The photo trembled in my hand as I shoved it back at her. "My parents are Frank and Diane Morrison. I have a birth certificate, a social security number, a whole life." "What hospital?" she asked again, her voice rising. "What doctor delivered you? Have you ever seen your birth certificate?" The questions hit like physical blows because I didn't have answers. I'd never needed to see my birth certificate. My parents had always handled official documents. The baby photos in our family albums started when I was 2, but lots of families were bad at taking pictures. "Right?" "I think you're my Emma," Victoria said, tears welling anew. "I think you're my stolen daughter." The walls seemed to close in as I stared at the photograph again, my mind racing through memories, searching for proof she was wrong. First day of kindergarten, Mom braiding my hair, Dad teaching me to ride a bike in Lincoln Park, Willow and I making snow angels in the backyard. These were real memories with real parents. They had to be. "I need to go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I backed toward the door. "My sister is getting married. Please, just let me explain what I know." After Emma disappeared, we hired private investigators, worked with police, appeared on every news program that would have us. The case went cold after 5 years, but I never stopped looking. When Mason told me his fiancée's family was originally from Milwaukee, something stirred in me. Then I saw you today. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Willow. "Where are you?" "The music is starting. I have to go," I repeated, but my legs felt unsteady, like the floor was shifting sand. "Harper, I've waited 28 years. I can wait a few more hours. But please, after the ceremony, we need to talk more. We need to do a DNA test." I left her there, the door closing softly behind me, and walked back to the bridal suite in a daze. The hallway's wallpaper blurred, the distant strains of wedding music mocking the chaos in my head. Willow grabbed my hands the moment I entered, her grip warm and familiar. "There you are. Is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Everything's fine," I lied, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Just pre-wedding jitters. Not even my wedding, and I'm nervous." But as we lined up for the processional, Victoria's words echoed, a storm cloud over the sunny day, threatening to drown out the joy with questions I couldn't yet face. The processional music swelled through the manor, a gentle string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, but it sounded distant to me, muffled by the roar of questions in my head. I linked arms with the best man, Mason's brother, my steps mechanical as we walked down the aisle, lined with white petals and smiling guests. The air was warm, scented with fresh flowers and the subtle perfume of the crowd, but my skin felt clammy, Victoria's revelation clinging to me like damp fog. Willow followed behind, radiant on Dad's arm, her veil fluttering softly, oblivious to the earthquake shifting beneath my feet. As we reached the altar, I took my place among the bridesmaids, clutching the bouquet with white-knuckled fingers. The officiant, a kindly older man with a warm smile, began the welcome, his voice booming over the gathered family and friends. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." But my eyes darted to the front row, where Mom and Dad sat, their faces a mask of pride laced with something sharper. Guilt? Fear? Mom dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her lavender dress catching the light, while Dad held her hand, his knuckles pale. Victoria sat across the aisle with her husband, Thomas, a silver-haired man who whispered to her occasionally, his brow furrowed. She caught my gaze once, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce with that desperate hope, and I looked away quickly, focusing on Willow as she approached the altar. Mason's face lit up when he saw her, tears glistening, and for a moment, the purity of their love anchored me. This was their day, not mine to ruin with wild accusations from a grieving mother. But as the ceremony unfolded, doubt wormed its way deeper. The vows, Mason promising to love Willow through sickness and health, joy and sorrow, echoed hollowly in my ears. In all of life's challenges, he said, his voice steady, and I wondered what challenges my own life had been built on. Lies? A stolen child? My collarbone itched under the dress, the birthmark suddenly a brand, evidence of a truth I didn't want. I scanned the crowd subtly, spotting Brady in the back, his usher duties done, phone in hand as he texted discreetly. Had he found anything on that missing persons check I'd asked for? The thought made my stomach churn, bile rising with the floral scents. Guests shifted in their seats, a baby cooed somewhere in the middle rows, and I forced myself to smile, to play the part of the supportive sister. When it was time for the ring exchange, Willow's hands trembled slightly as she slid the band onto Mason's finger. "With this ring I thee wed," she said, her voice soft but sure. I handed over the bouquet mechanically, my mind flashing to the photograph Victoria had shown me, that chubby baby with my eyes, my mark. Was that me? Emma? The name felt foreign, like trying on someone else's clothes. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and as they kissed, applause erupted, a wave of joy crashing over the room. Petals were tossed, cameras flashed, and I clapped along, my palms stinging. But inside, turmoil raged. Every glance at my parents now carried suspicion. Mom's tears, were they for Willow's happiness or the fear of losing me? Dad's strained smile, memorizing my face before the truth erased it. We recessed down the aisle, arm in arm with the groomsmen again, the music triumphant. Outside in the garden for photos, the sun warmed my skin, birds chirping in the manicured hedges, but I felt chilled to the bone. Willow pulled me into a group hug with the bridesmaids, her laughter bubbling. "We did it. I'm married," she exclaimed, squeezing tight. "You were amazing," I said, hugging back, but my voice cracked just a little. As the photographer posed us, family shots first, I stood between Mom and Dad, their arms around me, and wondered if this was the last time we'd feel like a unit. Victoria hovered on the periphery, watching, waiting. During the cocktail hour, while guests mingled with drinks clinking and soft jazz playing, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I slipped away to find Brady, the gravel crunching under my heels as I crossed the lawn. He was near the bar, chatting with cousins, but his face sobered when he saw me. "Harper, what's wrong?" he asked, pulling me aside behind a topiary. "Can you run that missing persons check?" Emma Caldwell, Milwaukee, 1997. Kidnapped at 14 months. "Why would you need that?" "Please, Brady. I'll explain everything later. Just see what you can find." He studied me, then nodded. "Give me 20 minutes. I'll make some calls." As I waited, sipping a ginger ale to settle my nerves, the bubbles fizzing against my tongue, the ceremony replayed in fragments, vows of eternal love mocking the fragility of my own foundations. Little did I know, the answers Brady would uncover would confirm the nightmare, turning doubt into devastating certainty. The cocktail hour was in full swing, the garden buzzing with laughter and the clink of glasses, but I felt like I was underwater. The world muted and heavy. The scent of grilled appetizers and blooming roses drifted on the warm June air, but my stomach twisted, Victoria's words still clawing at me. "You're our stolen daughter." I couldn't shake the image of that photograph, the baby with my eyes, my birthmark, or the way my parents' faces had flickered with something unspoken all morning. I needed answers, and I needed them now, before the toasts and dances swept me back into the role of dutiful sister. I spotted Mom and Dad across the lawn, posing for photos with relatives near a stone fountain, its gentle trickle mocking my racing pulse. The photographer moved on, leaving them momentarily alone, and I seized my chance, weaving through clusters of guests in pastel dresses and sharp suits. My heels sank into the grass, grounding me as I clutched my phone, where I'd snapped a quick picture of Victoria's photo before handing it back. The evidence felt like a live wire in my hand. "Mom, Dad, I need to ask you something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I need the truth." Dad's smile faltered, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Harper, sweetheart, what's wrong?" His tone was warm, but his gaze darted to Mom, a silent signal. I held up my phone, the blurry image of baby Emma staring back at us. "Mason's mother thinks I'm her kidnapped daughter. She says this baby is me." The color drained from Dad's face so fast I thought he might collapse, his suit jacket suddenly looking too big for his frame. Mom's hand flew to her throat, clutching the pearls she'd worn to match Willow's, her lavender dress shimmering in the fading sunlight. "That's ridiculous," she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her. "Then tell me what hospital I was born in. Show me my birth certificate. Give me the name of one person who knew me before I was 2. My words came out sharp, slicing through the festive hum around us. A few guests glanced our way, their smiles faltering at my raised voice. They stood frozen, the silence between us stretching like a tight rope. Dad reached for me, his hand trembling, but I stepped back, the grass cool against my ankles. His arm dropped, limp at his side. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, hoarse with something raw. "We loved you the moment we saw you." The ground tilted beneath me, the fountain's splash blurring in my vision. Those weren't the words of innocent parents falsely accused. Those were the words of people about to confess. "We need to go somewhere private," Dad said, his voice hollow, gesturing toward a shaded bench under a willow tree. "No." I planted my feet, rage bubbling in my chest, hot and unfamiliar. "You've had 28 years of privacy. Start talking." Mom's tears came then, mascara streaking dark rivers down her cheeks, her carefully applied makeup dissolving like her composure. "Harper, please, let us explain." "Explain what? That you kidnapped me? That my entire life is a lie?" "We didn't kidnap you," Mom said, her voice breaking. "We saved you." The word saved hit like a slap, sharp and stinging. Around us, wedding guests laughed, oblivious to the bomb detonating in the garden. I saw Brady approaching from across the lawn, his face grim, phone clutched tightly in his hand. "Frank, Diane," he said quietly, joining us. "We need to talk." I found the case file. Emma Caldwell, taken from Brennan's grocery store, October 15, 1997. The details match. Dad sank onto the stone bench, his shoulders slumping like his bones had turned to water. Mom sat beside him, clutching his hand, her knuckles white. "We never meant for it to go this far," he said, his voice barely audible over the distant jazz from the reception. "Start from the beginning," I demanded, my voice ice-cold despite the heat rising in my throat. "Every detail." Mom took a shaky breath, her eyes fixed on the ground. "We'd been trying for a baby for 7 years, 4 miscarriages. The doctor said it would never happen. I was volunteering at my sister's women's shelter in Milwaukee, trying to fill the void. One night, a woman came in during a storm, young, maybe early 20s, high on something. She had a toddler with her, about 14 months old, a beautiful little girl with bright green eyes and a crescent birthmark. My hand went to my collarbone, the mark hidden beneath my dress but burning now, a traitor to my past. She left the baby in the playroom and disappeared. Mom continued. "We waited 3 days. No one came back for her. No missing child reports matched her description. I convinced myself she'd been abandoned. So you just took me? My voice was a blade, cutting through her words. We were going to go through proper channels, Dad said, his eyes pleading. File with child services, become foster parents, adopt legally. But then Diane saw the news report about the Caldwell baby. Same age, same birthmark. I panicked, Mom admitted, her voice small. I knew if we turned you in, we'd lose you. You'd already been through so much trauma. You'd started calling me Mama. You were happy with us, so you became kidnappers. The word tasted bitter, like the metallic tang of fear in my mouth. We became your parents, Dad said firmly, his gaze steady for the first time. We moved to Chicago within the week. My company had an opening there. I had a friend who could create documents. We gave you a new name, a new life, a family who loved you. Brady's phone rang, and he stepped away to answer, his expression growing darker. I stood there, the garden spinning around me, the scent of roses now cloying, suffocating. You watched those parents on TV begging for their baby back, and you kept me anyway, I said, my voice trembling with betrayal. By then, you were ours, Mom said, her tears falling freely now. You had night terrors those first months. You'd wake up screaming. Whatever happened before you came to us, it wasn't good. We told ourselves we were protecting you. From my real parents? From Victoria, who's been searching for me for nearly 3 decades? Brady returned, his face pale. Harper, there's more. The woman who took Emma Caldwell was caught on security footage. She was identified as Melissa Vaughn, a drug addict with a history of mental illness. She was found dead of an overdose 2 weeks after the kidnapping. The baby was never found. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity, each one a shard piercing my heart. The unstable woman at the shelter. The abandoned toddler. My parents' desperate desire for a child. A perfect storm that had shattered 2 families. I looked at Mom and Dad, their faces crumpled with guilt, and felt the life I'd known unraveling like a thread pulled from a tapestry. Victoria needs to know, I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence in the garden, the words tasting like ash on my tongue. She spent 28 years believing her daughter might be dead. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn, the once vibrant wedding festivities, now a distant hum behind the wall of our unraveling secrets. Harper, no, Mom pleaded, reaching for my arm, her fingers cold and desperate. We're your parents. We raised you. We love you. You stole me. The accusation ripped from my throat, raw and unfiltered, echoing in the space between us. And Willow, God, does she know? No, Dad said quickly, his eyes darting toward the reception where laughter still floated on the breeze. We found out Diane was pregnant with her just 2 months after we brought you home. A miracle, the doctor said. The stress of trying for so long had finally lifted. I laughed, but it came out hysterical, sharp like shattered glass. Because you'd already stolen your first child. Why bother with fertility treatments when kidnapping was so much easier? Brady cleared his throat, his presence a steady anchor amid the chaos, his phone still warm from the calls he'd made. Harper, let's take a breath. The details from the file. Melissa Vaughn didn't just abandon you at the shelter. She had a record, multiple arrests for possession, erratic behavior. The police theorized she took Emma, you, from that grocery store on a whim, maybe thinking she could sell you or keep you as her own. But she overdosed before they could track her down. No one connected the dots to the shelter because your mom, Diane, didn't report finding you. Mom nodded slowly, her tears drying into salty tracks on her cheeks. That woman, Melissa, she was ranting when she came in, high out of her mind, talking about how the baby wasn't safe, how people were after her. I thought she was paranoid, delusional. When she vanished, I held you that first night and you stopped crying in my arms. It felt like fate. Fate? I snapped, pacing now, the grass staining the hem of my dress. You saw the news, the Caldwells pleading, offering rewards, their world crumbling. And you did nothing. You packed up, forged papers, and turned me into Harper Morrison. Dad rubbed his face, his stubble rasping against his palm. The friend who helped with the documents, he owed me a favor from college. Fake birth certificate from a small clinic in Milwaukee, listing Diane as the mother. We burned the originals, whatever Melissa had left behind. No pictures from those early days because we were terrified someone would recognize you. We started fresh in Chicago. New jobs, new neighborhood. You thrived, Harper. You were happy. Happy on a foundation of lies, I muttered, my chest tight, the air thick with the scent of wilting flowers from nearby arrangements. Brady's confirmation made it real. The security footage description of Melissa matched what Mom described. Disheveled, frantic, snatching a toddler from a cart, while Victoria turned for just a second to grab a can of soup. Across the garden, I saw Victoria approaching with her husband Thomas, his arms supportive around her waist. She must have sensed the gathering storm, her face etched with a mix of hope and fear.